So this is what 16 years on testosterone replacement therapy looks like, or is it? So I do get questions about TRT all the time. Blood pressure, prostate, fertility, testicle size. I don't want to brag about that one. But one of the most common questions that I do hear is testosterone going to make me lose my hair? And I definitely understand why people ask because hair loss seems cosmetic and it seems shallow until it's your hair you're talking about. So my story started long before testosterone. I just got tired of it, tired of catching my reflection in a mirror when I walked into a restaurant, tired of paying attention whether I was standing under a bright light or not. Are people really noticing? Is it really receding as much as I think it is? Why didn't I bring my hat? So it was roughly 2003. I was 40 years old, and somewhere along the way, my hair had become part of my internal dialogue. It wasn't a constant thing, but it was there. It had become an insecurity. And if you've ever started losing your hair, you probably know exactly what I mean, what that feels like. So you start to become a lighting expert, right? You know which mirrors are your friends, which ones are absolute traitors. You know what your hair looks like when it's wet. You know what it looks like under a fluorescent light. And suddenly, you own three hats. I remember the day I walked into my barbershop and I told Sam, just shave it off. Sam had been cutting hair for probably 30 years, and he looked at me and he said, you don't have to do that yet. You still have plenty of hair. And I remember thinking, he said yet. And that was the one word that told me everything I really needed to know. This was a man who'd been watching men lose their hair for 3 decades or more. He knew where the train was headed. So we did compromise that day. He gave me a really short buzz cut. And honestly, I walked out of there. It was such a huge relief. Over the next few months, I got more and more comfortable with it. Yeah, my friends had fun with it. I heard all the jokes, but eventually it just became me. But here's the important part of this whole story. That was a good 7 years or more before I started testosterone replacement therapy. I know because that was the first day on TRT. It was also the first day I had a blind date, the best one of my life, and it was the day I met my wife. Aww. So shaving my head had already become part of my routine for years before June 4th, 2010. So when somebody looks at me today and thinks, well, of course he's bald. He's been on testosterone for 16 years. Yeah, I'm not so sure that that timeline actually matters. So let's answer the question. Does TRT cause hair loss? The most accurate answer is not necessarily, but it may accelerate male pattern baldness in a man who's already genetically predisposed to it. And I know that sounds like one of those sort of frustrating YouTube answers where everybody is afraid to say yes or no. So, in plain English, obviously, when you start testosterone replacement therapy, you increase the amount of testosterone that's available in your body. So some of that testosterone can be converted by an enzyme which turns it into a more potent androgen called DHT, dihydrotestosterone. DHT is not some kind of evil hormone. Your body makes it for a reason. But if the hair follicles on your scalp are genetically predisposed for androgens like DHT, that's going to matter. A healthy hair follicle produces a thicker, stronger hair. But as the follicle miniaturizes, the hair can become finer. So the growth phase is going to become shorter. The shedding stage is going to last longer, and the regrowth stage does not last as long. Therefore, hair becomes less and less. And over time, you start seeing that familiar pattern. You have your temples receding, the crown thins, density across the top starts disappearing. And this is where TRT enters the conversation. If you already are genetically predisposed to male pattern baldness, to hair loss, then more androgen exposure is potentially going to speed up the process that is already underway. That train has already left the station. So the simplest way I can explain this is that TRT is going to add more fuel, but the genetics you have are going to have a lot to do whether there was a fire there in the first place. And that distinction is going to matter because TRT does not mean every man is going to go bald. Not even close. Men respond differently. Genetics, age, follicle sensitivity, family history. And I'm a pretty good example of why this isn't black and white because even after 16 years on TRT, I'm not actually bald. If I don't shave my head for a few days, I'm going to grow stubble on my head. But the added bonus now is that it's all gray and white, so winning. Now, is my hair as full and thick as it was 20 years ago? Hell no, not even close. Was that aging? Was it genetics? Was it 16 years of hormone therapy? Probably some combination of all three. And I will honestly never really know, and I don't really care. But that's important for me to say because I could sit here and tell you TRT has absolutely nothing to do with my hair. But I don't know that. My hair was already thinning years before testosterone. I was already shaving it. I already had the genetic pattern. So, could 16 years of TRT accelerated that process? Probably. Could I have ended up with the same hair at 63 years old now as I did without TRT? Probably. I can't separate those variables. I can't follow the data. And I'm not going to pretend that I can just to make people click on a video. So, how do you know if you're one of the men who may be vulnerable? Well, one obvious clue is the family history. And before somebody tells you, just look at your mother's father, it's really not that simple. Hair loss genetics are more complicated than one grandfather on one side of your family. So look around. Your father, your brothers, your grandfather, your uncles, and probably most importantly, look at yourself. Is your hair already thinning? Has the hairline been slowly moving back for years? Are you seeing more scalp under the bright light? If that process is already happening before TRT, then I think it's completely reasonable to say that it could affect the pace at which it happens. Not definitely, but probably. And I know that I keep using that word probably, but it's because I don't want to scare men away from TRT, but I also don't want to pretend the risk doesn't exist. So usually for me, the next question that I hear is, okay, I want to go on TRT, but I also want to keep my hair. Can I do anything about it? Potentially, yes. There are legitimate treatments for male pattern hair loss. And this is where I want to be careful because I'm not a doctor, and some of these treatments do come with trade offs of their own. One of the best known options is Minoxidil, better known as Rogaine. It's available topically or orally. Minoxidil doesn't work by lowering your testosterone, it works by prolonging the growth phase of your hair cycle. But it requires consistency, and the results vary. Then you have finasteride. Finasteride works very differently. It inhibits an enzyme involved in converting testosterone into DHT. It can reduce DHT exposure and help some men slow hair loss and preserve their hair. But, and this matters, DHT is a biologically active hormone. So some men have reported side effects involving sexual dysfunction, mood, or other issues. So that doesn't mean that every man is going to get side effects, but it means this is a real medication with real trade-offs that deserve real conversation with a qualified clinician. Because your bathroom mirror is a terrible scientific instrument, especially at 5 in the morning. But I think there's another part of this conversation that doesn't get talked about enough. Because for a lot of men, losing your hair doesn't feel like losing hair. It feels like losing youth, becoming less relevant, losing control. And I understand that. I lived it. So for years, I would check the mirrors. I would avoid bright lights. I thought about hats. I wondered what other people were noticing. And the strange thing is, I was probably thinking about my hair far more than anybody else was. That's usually how insecurity works. We assume everybody is studying the thing that we're trying to hide. Most people aren't. They're too busy worrying about the thing that they're trying to hide. So eventually, I had to make a decision. Keep fighting to look like the version of me that I used to be, or decide what the next version of me was going to look like. I'm not telling you to shave your head. I'm telling you what I chose. And for me, the day I stopped fighting my hair loss was the day it stopped having so much power over me. So if you're considering TRT and you're worried about your hair, I'm not going to dismiss that concern. It's legitimate. For me, I wasn't ever going to be starring in a shampoo commercial. And if you were to ask me whether I would trade the strength, the energy, the drive, the ability to maintain muscle, the way I feel, and the quality of life that I'm experiencing now for the possibility that maybe I might have a little more hair on the top of my head, for me, that's an easy answer. But it has to be your answer, not mine. And if you're losing your hair, I would leave you with this. You have options. You can treat it, you can fight it, you can transplant it, you can style it, you can wear a hat. Or you can hand your wife a pair of clippers and discover very quickly how much she's looking forward to this moment. It's always nice when someone's got your back.
Wow, just do that. I got your back. I got your head. I got your ears. I got all this stuff in between. You're
It's not easy being pretty. Whatever you decide, make the decision from good information, not from fear, not from internet panic, and not because some bald guy on YouTube told you what to do. I'm just telling you what I chose, and 20-something years later, I'm good with it. If you're over 50 and you're trying to make smarter decisions about your strength, your health, your hormones, aging, that's what we talk about here. And if that sounds like the kind of conversation you would like, subscribe. It's all free content. And if you want to hear what 16 years on TRT actually taught me, the lived experience, not the theory, I'm going to put that in the video right here. And I'll see you guys in the next one.